After more than a month with the Google Pixel 6a, I can earnestly say that this phone has finally broken through the barriers that had plagued the previous Pixel A phones from truly competing with Apple and their SE products. I've always enjoyed using the A phones from previous generations, but I do feel like with the 6a, it can replace a flagship phone as anyone's daily driver. So what exactly elevates the 6a into this standing? Let's look deeper into what I think is Google's most important pixel.
What do you get when you add more flavor and color to the palette of life? I say yeah, no more fighting, everyone's hyping. Kick it to the mix cause they all fighting. When you're alive, you never really ever die. No laws, no kings, no need to testify.
There are two big storylines when it comes to this year's mid-range Pixel phone. The first contributor that makes the Pixel 6a more well-rounded when compared to predecessors is that in-house designed processor. No, it isn't anything upgraded or new, as Google is actually recycling their Tensor SoC, which debuted on the other Pixel 6 products last year. This unifies the entire Pixel 6 lineup with one chipset, which I actually appreciate a lot. I just recently revealed the Xiaomi Redmi Note 11 Pro, and the sheer amount of diversity and processing power based around that 16 phones that share the same name is mind-boggling and honestly confusing. So the Tensor processor isn't necessarily like a powerhouse chip. However, it supports Android 12 nearly flawlessly. We've seen this in the past with Apple, where an iPhone will operate so effectively with such little RAM. And Google has finally figured something out here, as during my everyday usage of this phone, I really couldn't draw the line between what I could classify as a flagship and mid-tier performance. Whereas last year's Qualcomm Snapdragon 765G processor kept the 5A flowing through tasks like admirably, if you were looking for it, you could point out situations where the phone performs slightly less so than what people would consider flagship devices to perform. It is significantly harder to do that this year with the Tensor-powered 6a side by side a traditional flagship phone. I'm not saying it's not there statistically, but for every everyday task, the 6a is as snappy as you can expect from a modern flagship smartphone. The fact that I can even say that as a comparison to phones twice the price of the 6a's $449 price tag, and that alone puts this phone on lists of consideration for any buyer out there. With 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, this phone has yet to really struggle with applications. I've been on one of my mobile gaming addiction stretches, and the Pixel 6a has accommodated every game in my library well. The phone does heat up to a semi-discomforting level after prolonged usage, but I have yet to notice significant throttling. At worst, it's just been a quick stutter before stabilizing for the long haul. Unfortunately, though, software optimization can only do so much to remedy this heating discomfort, so hopefully the second generation of the Tensor chips will handle temperature a bit better. They could have done better with this one. Still, I'm quite happy with the overall performance on the 6a. The other big change to elevate the 6a into a mainstream player, in my opinion, is the redesign of the body. Actually, the right term should be recycling, as the Pixel 6a is a near clone of the 6 and the 6 Pro that came before it. Once again, I feel that streamlining a lineup to match is a good thing. I didn't dislike the look or the feel of the 5a and the 4a before it. They were perfectly fine designs, if not a bit uninspired for a sub $500 phone, but we weren't using the A series because they were fashion icons in the look department. Their performance for the price point was why we were attracted to the mid-tier Pixels in the first place. That doesn't matter anymore, as they're uniform, and I couldn't have asked for a better transition. Yes, Google still had to cut corners to lower the price point by using things like a really long tenured Corning Gorilla Glass 3 display. Notice how I said long tenured and not outdated, because I still think that the Gorilla Glass 3 is a valid product that does the job. I've used double-digit amount of phones with this glass, and it isn't a detractor for me at least. Before we continue with this review, I just wanted to tell you guys to visit Sypnotix.com, as we do have written article-only reviews that aren't featured on our YouTube channel, at least not in video format. So if you're not checking out Sypnotix.com, you might be missing some really cool products that other reviewers other than Lita and myself also review on our website. So there's a lot of great stuff. Head over to Sypnotix.com and check it out. The viewing experience on the 6.1-inch Full HD OLED panel is also quite enjoyable to view. It has 429 ppi thanks to that 20:9 aspect ratio, and it's a slightly shorter display than the 6 and the 6 Pro, but it isn't really noticeable when viewing media. The colors are vivid thanks to that OLED panel, but what I really like about it is that it's pretty consistent across the board. The viewing angles are good in all directions, the saturation and brightness are all on par with what I find acceptable for a good viewing session. The only thing someone may find disappointing about it is that it has a 60Hz refresh rate. Every time we review a 60Hz phone nowadays, I say the same exact thing. If you know, you know, and it's hard not to know once you've known. Essentially, if you've used a higher refresh rate, you can kind of see the difference. You'll get used to using a 60Hz display again, and it doesn't really deter the performance, in my opinion. If you haven't experienced a higher refresh rate on a phone, then you won't know what it feels like, and this will be more of the same, and thus isn't a problem. Physically, the Pixel 6a is deceptively premium in look and feel. It has an aluminum frame holding the plastic back body together. Budget devices don't usually have an aluminum frame to save on material costs. This makes the phone have a flagship touch when holding it in your hand. While the back is a glossy plastic, it looks deceptive as it resembles the glass back of the Pixel 6, but still feels hollow when you tap on it. This isn't to say that the phone feels cheap, as I actually do think that there is a noticeable difference in material in the feel compared to last year's model. I think Google did a fine job mixing between what consumers consider cheap and quality material to fit into a package for this sub $500 price tag. I would still say that the Apple iPhone SE 2022 is a more premium feeling device at $429 MSRP, but the Pixel 6a doesn't feel too far behind it anymore. Another big change as a result of design updates is the relocation of the rear cameras. The 6a has a modified camera bar that debuted on the Pixel 6. However, unlike that phone and its bulging camera strip, the one on the 6a is much more refined. The sensors are just slightly protruding from the rest of the body of the phone, making it a much more pleasing aesthetic to look at. Part of this is contributed because Google has kept the same exact dual rear camera setup that has been around since the Pixel 3. It's a 12.2 megapixel wide sensor accompanied by a 12 megapixel ultra wide partner that, while still plenty good enough for most people in 2022, is starting to feel a bit outdated when you consider the fact that some people potentially upgrading from this phone could have had that same exact hardware on a new phone that they're buying right now as they did on the Pixel 3 in 2018. On the one hand, photo clarity and optimal lighting is still terrific thanks to a mixture of the sensor and Google's AI software. You can easily snap a good-looking, by mobile standards, shot at any given time with this phone. Just pull it out and snap. That's always been a strength of the Pixel cameras. It's just really easy to frame and capture something usable by relying on that automatic mode. On the other hand, some of the other recurring complaints I've had over the years about the Google cameras continue to appear as well. I don't personally like the way Google processes HDR photos, as I feel the phone harshly over-processes to the point where it does detract from the details on the frame. On some photos, surfaces have a shimmer to them that isn't actually there in real life. Other things like portrait mode and night sight still hold up well enough on the Pixel 6a. I can nitpick on things I want to see better from the results I've received, but overall this is still one of the best mobile cameras on a brand new phone you can buy under $500. It's really hard to debate that. This is one aspect of the Pixel 6a handily beats the iPhone SE Gen 3 in. Other goodies that the Pixel 6a supplies us with is an under-display fingerprint scanner that does the job. It's not the fastest scanner out there, as it takes a moment for the finger to recognize, but it's fine. There's also a 4,410 milliamp hour battery, keeping the phone afloat during the workday. I've thoroughly run the Pixel 6a to the ground this last month, and I can earnestly say that the battery woes that have been a stigma attached to the Pixel brand has been exercised. Like, this is a competent phone in the battery life department that will last an entire day for casual users. I've hit like 7 to 8 hours of screen on time with constant streaming or gaming going on. That could not have happened on previous generations of Pixels across the board until the 6 series. Although there's fast charging, I would have liked to have wireless Qi charging on this device, as I do have a lot of Qi charging peripherals around the office and in my house. In fact, I have a Pixel charger that won't work with this or any of the A-line phones. I don't find it unreasonable to ask for this, as the iPhone SE has Qi charging in this price segment. There's a lot to like here with the Pixel 6a. For the mere fact that this is a $450 phone that looks good, has stock Android software with updates, a good camera, and at least of all, 5G connectivity, which we haven't even talked about, makes this phone elevate straight to the top of my short list for people to consider. There's really not much compromise with the 6a this year. The things that are obviously budget restraints are intelligently omitted, where it doesn't really hamper the overall experience with this phone. I think Google did a terrific job bringing the Pixel 6a to the same playing field as the iPhone SE this year. This is one of two in that sub $500 genre that I would easily recommend to buyers. It's a well-rounded phone that offers terrific value that I don't foresee many people being disappointed with in the long run. Once again, I'm Alex from the Sypnotix. If you enjoyed this review, hit that like button, leave a comment below. Let me know what you guys think of the Pixel 6a and whether you want this phone or the SE. It's a personal choice, but they're both really good phones. I would love to know what you guys think. I will see you guys next time.
You know what I like? Likes. You know what I don't like? A non-subscriber. So please subscribe and stay tuned for more.